Austria to declare neutrality. India's intervention in Vietnam War failed to reduce the escalation of conflict, but India's strong stand against the war was admired across the world. Former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi's intervention in Sri Lankan civil war in late 1980s was a big failure despite the signing of the Indo-Sri Lankan Accord and deploying the Indian peacekeeping force. But indeed, India was there. And under former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, India helped resolve the civil war between Maoist and Nepal's monarchy. 12-point agreement was signed in 2005, bringing an end to decades of violence in the country. Now, let's look at the big question that emerged from this. What can be India's role in Ukraine conflict? Can Prime Minister Modi mediate between Zelenskyy and Putin? What is the Indian leverage in war? Diplomacy today has boiled down to hard power. Will soft or smart touch work? On this issue, I am joined by Radha Galan, President and Chairman, Board of the International Ukrainian Crisis Fund. Thank you so much, Madam, for joining me. And Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Thank you so much, sir, for being with me on this show.
Thank you.
Radha, straight to you. My question is, what role does Ukraine envisage of India in the conflict which is taking place, and Russians are insistent on exchange of territory, Donbass, and other such vexed issues?
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here. At the end of the day, the Russians trust India much more than they are ever going to trust the United States. And that is attributed to a relationship that these two countries have had for over 100 years. And that's the roots of how far that relationship dates back. And so India can absolutely play a role of a peacemaker. And what Zelenskyy is certainly looking for is he's looking for India to give some kind of, virtuous signaling, international signaling, to end this conflict in a stronger way than India has, let's say, in the past. I think he's also looking to deepen the ties of a strategic partnership with India. And I really think that Zelenskyy realizes that he needs an honest broker and one that Russia might trust. And I'm just not so sure that Russia certainly trusts the United States in this process, despite the fact that Putin certainly has a much better relationship with President Donald Trump than he did with President Joe Biden. Nonetheless, that's not per se good enough. And that's why we've seen a bit of a stall when it comes to Putin. And let's not forget how the United States used actually India as a bit of a pawn in this game by upping tariffs on oil exports. And then, this really brought Russia to the table, in my opinion. So I do think that what Zelenskyy sees here and what the Ukrainians see here is India can play a role. We don't always have to use India as a pawn. We can actually invite India to the table to really help bring forward a peace deal. And I think the Ukrainian people would certainly love to see that.
So, Ambassador Sajjanhar, what is the Indian leverage when it comes to Ukraine? Because if we look at all the articles that are being published, it's about Donbass, it's about a territorial swap, it's about multiple other things which are hard issues of the ground, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I think the biggest advantage that India has when we speak about this conflict which has been going on now for more than 3.5 years. Number one is that, as it has been stated by you and also by the other panelists, that India has good relations, excellent relations with Russia, as well as with the West. Prime Minister Modi has been to Moscow. He's also traveled to Kyiv from Poland, from Warsaw. He took the 10-hour-long train journey. He has, right from the beginning of the war, he's been saying that this is not an era of war, this is time for dialogue and diplomacy. The other aspect in this is that India does not have any agenda. India does not have any personal, individual interest which it would like to advance. What it really wants is, it wants peace, it wants security, it wants stability. Because also as the voice of the global South, this war has been hurting the interest of the global South greatly. So I think both sides can trust India that it is not doing something which will meet its own needs, its own requirements, its own selfish interest, but it is doing it for the interests of the two countries involved, for bloodshed to stop, for violence, for destruction to stop, and so that the world can also live in peace. Both of these countries have great contributions that they can make to the world in economy, in strategic security and peace. So this is what what our interest is. It is not that we have military leverage, we are trying to pressure one against the other. We are economic leverage, which we are trying to use one against the other. Although, I would tend to disagree with my other panelist who said that it is the pressure on India that has brought Mr. Putin to the negotiating table. In my view, not at all. I don't think that has had any role to play whatsoever. Mr. Putin has been in a position of power and authority for the last 25 years. If he was, brought to the negotiating table, he would also have agreed to a ceasefire if that was the reason. Mr. Putin has thought, and I think quite rightfully so, that this is the best time for him to get a deal from the United States, from Mr. Trump. I agree when it is mentioned that Mr. Putin might not trust Mr. Trump, but then he feels that this is the best deal that he will possibly be able to get. Mr. Trump might be unpredictable, not reliable in that sense, but under the circumstances, the way he is been parroting, he's been taking forward and completely supporting what Mr. Putin has said in terms of no ceasefire, having a full comprehensive settlement, the transfer of territories which are being occupied by Russia, whether it's Crimea, Donbass, even parts of Kherson and Zaporizhia, and also in terms of no NATO membership, etc. So I think Mr. Putin feels that this is the best deal he could get. I don't think that the tariffs on India have had any role to play. If that was the case, then Mr. Trump would have imposed tariffs on even better, bigger friend of Russia, that is China, in terms of the strategic and economic partnership that both the countries have with each other.
I agree with you. Vlada, do you think that the road to a compromise or negotiated peace will flow from Donbass, which is the ultimate demand, which comprises of Donetsk and Luhansk?
What we have to understand is that for Ukraine to give up 15 to 20% of its land or even larger, one is unconstitutional in Ukraine, but two could cause a revolution on Zelensky's hands. The Ukrainian people aren't going to support large swaths of land transfer. The second thing we have to consider is that some of that land holds strategic interest for the U.S. that came out of the mineral deal. So how is the U.S. going to feel about Russia having that territory versus Ukraine? I personally don't think they're going to fully support that. That being said, I have to be realistic and put aside my feelings as a Ukrainian and look at the situation realistically. The bar for victory has been set very high, not giving up anything. And unfortunately, that just isn't how wars end, and that isn't how negotiations happen. Every side ends up having to give something. And the reason that we're seeing, real movement and a potential for this is because we're finally seeing that both sides are willing to almost come in with no preset conditions, going into this. Before it was, nobody wanted to hear no NATO. Before Ukraine said, we don't want to give up any land, period. Now you're seeing, Ukraine saying, okay, we're willing to have the discussion. That's a, big change moving forward. You're willing, you're hearing Ukraine say, okay, we understand that no NATO may be on the table. And, that's something that they've certainly come to the table on and will continue doing so. And I think that's truly positive. But, Trump has been in office since January of this year, and not once has, Putin agreed to really properly come to the table. In fact, even when Trump's rhetoric was very pandering to the Russian side, quite supportive, even at times really offensive to the Ukrainians and to the Ukrainian president. And at the end of the day, Russia didn't come to the table. What started to change is when you started to see an attempt at, what you're going to see in the long run as secondary sanctions that started bringing Russia to the table. And at the end of the day, Russia cannot afford to have the backbone of its economy broken. I wish that, we'd certainly focus more on things like the shadow fleets, which account for 60 to 70% of how Russian oil is getting out. And regarding China, it's a big question. Why didn't Trump, impose a tariff, when it comes to China, which is a massive trading partner. In fact, I think the number one trading partner of Russia. And the reason is because Trump is actually still negotiating with China regarding U.S. interests. So I think that's the reason that, he didn't impose kind of the tariff on China. But at the end of the day, I think the reason, the realistic situation we're looking at is both parties are able to come to the table now because there's really no set pre-existing conditions, and they're willing to lay it all on the table and have the dialogue. I certainly wish that dialogue would be scheduled already for a trilateral meeting, which has not happened, and that's a bit worrying. And one of the reasons I think it hasn't happened is I really don't think either side is having cold feet. I think neither side wants to be embarrassed or embarrass the United States or other peacemakers, potentially like India, because they really want to make sure the terms are set and they agree on the terms. And I think you're 100% right to ask the question of what about the Donbass, because I think that is one of the largest terms that they are going to clash over consistently. But I don't think it's realistic to ask Ukraine to give up 20% of its land. Imagine how the Indian people would feel if you asked them to cede 20% of their land, in a conflict. That's a very contentious among the people. And at the end of the day, I don't think Zelenskyy wants a civil war or a revolution on his hands, but we do have to be realistic. We do have to put everything on the table, and I think we're going to see that in the coming weeks.
Okay, Ambassador Sajjana, your closing comments, and there was I wouldn't say a naughty piece in the NYT, but a lot of people were seeing that the man who used to head the armed forces in Ukraine was dispatched to London as the ambassador, as someone second in line, or a person whom they can talk if Zelenskyy is not there.
Yeah, maybe, there are very many speculations that have been going on, and, whether Mr. Zelenskyy would be able to continue, what are the different scenarios, as has been mentioned. It's a part of the constitution that no territory can be ceded, etc. So whether Zelenskyy could be shown the way out and someone more amenable and acceptable to the West, and who would also sort of, come in, who could say that in the interest of ending bloodshed and violence and death and destruction.
Yeah, Ambassador Sajjana, the Guardian has done a full page on General Envoy, ... future Ukraine President valorized London's waiting game. In fact, they have done a huge write-up on him, plastering his photograph in front of Zelenskyy.
Yeah, no, I think these are all speculative games. These are all mischievous games. And I don't think we should really be engaging in them at this particular stage, because, the discussions and negotiations are at a very sensitive juncture. So, let's not, meander onto issues of this nature. And also, as far as what role India's, punitive tariffs on India, secondary sanctions on India had to play, because I don't think that is the subject of discussion. But let me tell, for the information of, my distinguished co-panelists, that, negotiations with India are also going on. Negotiations with India on tariffs have not ended. In fact, there was a team from the United States which was to visit India for the 6th round of negotiations on the 25th and 26th of August. So it's not as if negotiations with India had broken down. In fact, the terms and conditions with the USTR had been accepted by USTR, and they had been sent to Trump for his signature. But then he has, for his own reasons, if it was, he didn't want to put secondary sanctions on China. There is also Turkey. With Turkey, there are no negotiations that are going on. Okay. That could have been done. Turkey is a very significant importer of oil from Russia. But yes, I think one needs to be realistic at this particular stage. And I think India can play a role. India has been playing a role, as whether it was there was a problem of the export of wheat and fertilizers from Ukraine through the Black Sea. India had offered its good offices. Also, there was, when the issue was on Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, there was also, India was approached and India was able to speak to both the sides. So I think whenever it is required, and India has been a good,
Yes.
I will not call it mediator, but in terms of communicating voices and messages from Ukraine to Russia and from Russia to Ukraine in the past when, this shuttle diplomacy or movement was going on. So India can definitely play a role. As I said, India doesn't have any, so to say, skin in the game, that we don't have any specific interest except that we want this war to end for the interest of the world and particularly for the global south.
Okay. A closing comment from you, Vlada? A minute.
India can play an amazing role as peacemaker, and I quite believe in India a lot. In fact, I was one of the first Ukrainian voices in India, right in New Delhi, during the Raisina dialogues 3 years ago, that spoke on this when Lavrov was there. And so I certainly believe that India is in an incredibly strong position to be that peacemaker. And 3 years later, I'm glad to see that the world is encouraging it also. And I completely applaud Prime Minister Modi for also visiting Kyiv. He was in Russia and Moscow when the Children's Hospital was hit, and shortly thereafter he planned a visit to Ukraine, and I fully applaud that, because you see that Prime Minister Modi understands one thing and one thing perfectly, and that is that there's no reason for bloodshed, and there's certainly no reason to target civilians. And so I certainly hope, as we come into the next few months of these negotiations, India continues to step up and play the role that I've believed from 3 years ago that it can certainly play. And I think this continues to elevate India, at an international level. We've seen India growing. India's been rising over the last, 10, 15 years. And Prime Minister Modi has done an incredible job representing the Indian people. But most importantly, putting the interests of India first, which, as for India, is the way it should be.
Okay. Thank you both of you for joining me. Thank you for joining me on this On Point. So this was On Point 2. The next On Point is on China's mega dam project over the river Brahmaputra.
Go condoms?
It's over there.
क्या ये different sizes में आता है?
Actually, sir, size matter नहीं करता.
तो फिर क्या matter करता है?
The hardness
Of the condom.
of what's inside.
For the first time ever, presenting Hard Rock Gel.
अब free हर score condoms के 10 pack के साथ.
एक मिनट क्या हुआ? अभी से इतना खर्चा करोगे तो मेरी पढ़ाई का क्या करोगे?
तुमने पहले ही लाइफ इंश्योरेंस का चाइल्ड प्लान सोच रखा है इसके लिए।
सपनों को रखो सुरक्षित चाइल्ड प्लान के साथ। सबसे पहले लाइफ इंश्योरेंस।
A mega $170 billion dam project built by China on Brahmaputra has raised alarm bells in India with concerns over China weaponizing water. Among the various concerns lies in the possibility around China reducing the Brahmaputra's water flow by 85% during dry season, affecting millions of Indians living downstream. It was in December that the China announced it would build the world's largest hydropower dam in a border country just before the river crosses into India. Now the issue is that it will have a huge impact on the low riparian areas. On this issue, I am joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri. Madam, if the China is able to build this dam, the biggest dam, bigger than the Three Gorges Dam, it will have the capacity to reduce water flow by 11 to 25% when it comes to Guwahati. It will have the impact of reducing water flows in summer areas. And plus, as there is no hydrological data sharing, they will have the upper hand in context of the flow of the river. What are the Indian options? What should we be doing?
Well, I think that there are 2 or 3 points here. First of all, yes, you're right. It's a huge dam, very big project. And it is very surprising that China has announced this. There are 2 factors. One is that we do know that 70% of the flow in the Brahmaputra comes from the point below this Great Bend, where the Siang River turns into India. 70% of the water regeneration takes place below. So it's not that they have the capacity to entirely stop the water flow. I think the bigger worry for India with the building of this dam is the ability to weaponize water through this dam and flood the lower riparian areas. This is, I think, the biggest worry for India, because when you have such a huge dam with a huge amount of water storage, it could be a deliberate weaponization, it could be a natural disaster, it could be an earthquake, anything. The ability of this water stored in this huge dam that ability to send it into India unwanted, unexpectedly, in a negative manner. That's one thing. Second thing is India herself has been contemplating for a long time building a dam on the Brahmaputra, on the Indian side, of course. And there have been plans and so on. But there is the question of objections by the local people, and they don't want to their land to that process of talking to the local people, convincing them is going on. The idea of India building a dam at this point on the Brahmaputra, at a suitable point on the Indian side, is that it could act as a break for sudden inflow of water. So if you build a huge dam, but you keep it 50% vacant, then if there's a sudden inflow, then this dam is able to absorb the inflow if it comes from upstream by a deliberate act by any unfriendly person. So it's not that India has not been looking at it. India has been studying this question, has been considering all the options, and certainly it is considered with some concern by the experts.
Ambassador Sikri, it's not the first time that China has done it. China already controls the flows of the Mekong Delta, which affects the Southeast Asian economy. And Tibet is called the third pole of the world. Two poles, and this is the third pole of the world. It will have repercussion on the entire South Asia, including Bangladesh, leave alone Assam, which gets a lot of water during monsoons. So the possibility of building a dam which is bigger than 3 gorges without any environmental assessment, and anyway they had to redo a lot of aspect of 3 gorges in China, which led to inundation of the entire area. The ecological repercussion of building a dam in a seismic zone is just not, I would say, confined to China. It concerns us.
Of course, it does, definitely. And we have taken it up. We know that during recent discussions between External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar and Wang Yi, this issue has been taken up. We have conveyed our concerns to the Chinese side. It is very clear that India's concerns are there, and we are going to, we have already conveyed and we will continue to convey our concerns. But I'm talking about what we ourselves on our side are also thinking of, what action we are thinking of, what is the technical position. Those are the issues I had raised.
But if you have noticed, madam, if you have noticed the earlier statement which used to come in 1990s and 2000, they said that it is run-of-the-river project. And look at the way they have changed the language. Yes. From run-of-the-river project, madam, in 20 years, I started my career in 1998 and I used to read, and they would say it's run-of-the-river project. Now it's the biggest dam they are building, $170 billion. Yes. So they were lying all along for the past 25 years, ma'am.
Yeah, well, they always do that. China has very often said one thing and done completely the other. There's no doubt about that. And the size of the dam itself is absolutely humongous. It is a matter of great concern in itself to have such a huge dam, 3 times the size of the 3 Gorges Dam, in such a sensitive area, ecologically destroying so much of the flora and fauna of the area. And also the potential in a seismic zone, the potential for any kind of accident, the potential for weaponization, it's all there. It's very serious.
And my last question to you, madam, I know there's a limit to the intervention of one country to other. Do you think that this matter can be raised in international forums? Is it a workable solution?
Well, the law regarding upper riparian and lower riparian is, it's not very strong. India doesn't subscribe to many of those laws, whatever they are. So I don't think we will look at internationalizing this issue, just as we've had a very bad experience on internationalizing with the Indus waters.
Yes, absolutely. That is why I asked this question to you.
which was done by the World Bank and very unfair and unequal. And so I don't think we will be looking at internationalizing it, but I think certainly raising it bilaterally and considering our own countermeasures, this is going to be our focus.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so much for joining me. And this was the last on point. And the reason why we decided to do this on point was that the lies of China must be put on record. For the last 20 years, China had been saying it's run-of-the-river project. And it's not a dam they are building. And now they say that they are building a dam. Not only the biggest dam, but the biggest dam of all time with a budget of $170 billion. So it's another lie which China has committed. That they were building a run-of-the-river project, but they ended up now admitting it's the biggest dam they are building, even bigger than the 3 gorges they built in China. So this is all I had on Point today. I will see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you and good night.
सर वाटरप्रूफिंग के लिए बेस्ट है
हमेशा वाला क्यों नहीं
वेंकी जी एक छोटा सा गिफ्ट बिरला ओपस अश्योरेंस देने के लिए
मतलब प्रोडक्ट
वारंटी तो है ही, ये एक्स्ट्रा है। 1 साल में वाटरप्रूफिंग को कुछ भी हुआ तो वापस करके देंगे वो भी फ्री। पेंटिंग में पहली बार बिरला ओपस अश्योरेंस। रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर।
Papa, let's go to Duda. Happy birthday, Duda. Duda, I love you. Go, Duda, go. I love my Duda. I love my Duda.
Skoda.
Small window of hope has opened for Nimisha Priya. You know, human beings live by hope. Is Vijay challenging Dravidian party? Payments have been made, but no books inside. If there is corruption at the BO office, maybe I want to learn Hindi, that I do not know how to speak Kannada. Go to the second part.
to have Hindi compulsion.
2 kids were asked to clean the toilet because of their caste. All these kids were forced to do it. I will clearly protest against this. 3 passes, Mr. Gowda. People rush. I'm asking you, what makes Palaniswamy so confident? We're sitting on moral boulders. Tamil Nadu seems to have become extremely unsafe.
Every brand tells a story. And they are the storytellers. The Sutradhars. They present a brand with band, baja and barat to you. They are the Brandwalas.
Light, camera and action. Kick back, relax, grab your favorite snack because News 9 is here with your weekend dose of entertainment. It's time to take a deeper dive into the buzzworthy happenings of the entertainment world. From celebrity gossips to exclusive conversations, from nostalgic moments to News 9's pick of the week. Don't worry, we've got you covered here. And I hope you've grabbed your popcorn by now because News 9's page 3 is here to serve you everything that we call entertainment. So do stay tuned every Saturday and Sunday, 2:30 p.m.
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every scene, every fold, is crafted with excellence. It's timeless elegance and uncompromising quality made for the corner office. It's the ideas that inspire redefining order and elevating the tabletop. To the nines, for the leaders of today and the visionaries of tomorrow.
Associate sponsor Mahindra Electric Origin SUVs Unlimited Love.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9, English news as it should be.
Hello everyone, welcome. Thanks for tuning in to your favorite news destination. You're watching